This is Podco Media Networks.
On episode 164 of Confessions of a Marketer, light a fire under your SaaS. Hi, it's Mark Reed Edwards. Welcome back to Confessions of a Marketer. Nicolas Vandenberghe is in to discuss B2B SaaS products and lots more. We'll get to that in a moment. Next week, the final, at least for now, Confessions of a Marketer will feature Keith Cartwright on starting his new agency, Cartwright, which he started with the backing of WPP amid COVID-19 and the racial tensions. We'll discuss all of that, plus creative audacity and his side hustle, Saturday Morning, a nonprofit that aims to bring awareness to and shift perceptions of racial bias and injustice. Looking forward to that, so stay tuned. Thanks for listening. The next episode will be the final one for Confessions of a Marketer, at least for now. The podcast will probably come back on this feed in a month or two, but in slightly different form. I'm thinking of something a bit broader in scope. More to come next week. Okay, Nicolas Vandenberghe is in for a discussion about B2B marketing. Nicolas runs Chili Piper. You'll learn about the origins of that name when we start our interview in just a moment. And he says it can turn inbound leads into qualified meetings instantly. He started and sold lots of startups. And then he saw an opportunity in sales tech. So we get into everything around B2B marketing, whether people want hyper-specialization or all-in-one, meeting the needs of customers, making revenue teams more productive, and lots more. This was a great discussion. Really enjoyed it. So let's get to it. Nicolas, it's great to have you on Confessions of a Marketer. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell me about your background and the evolution of Chili Piper? And I'm really interested in how you got the name.
Sure, let's start with the name. So we started Chili Piper 4 years ago, 2016, with my co-founder, who also happens to my wife, Alina. She was running product at Bloomberg and Pearson at the time. And we wanted to go after sales tech, helping salespeople do their job. That's a mission that we have had in mind from the beginning for Chili Piper. And if you think sales, you think pipeline. So we were looking for something around pipeline. And we read this quote that said, "He who pays the piper call the tune." Right? I thought, wow, that's a cool quote. I'd love to call the tune. So we said pipeline piper, that's a good thing. And then the play on word came Chili Piper, and that's the name. So it was indirect, but that sounds like a perfect name. It sounds good. It's get the sense of hot. Something is hot. We actually use it all over our communication. We have our tagline, which is light a fire under your SaaS.
More than one meaning there.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So that's the story of the name. The story of the company is it's my fourth startup. So I've done startups before. I grew up in the south of France, and then I went to École Polytechnique to study math. So I was very far from entrepreneurship, and I decided I wanted to travel. And I thought that I would wanted to go to Asia and live there and make a stop in California. And I applied to Stanford Business School. And after 3 trials, they got me there. And I was thinking, okay, that's great. It's a 2-year stop, and then I'll move on to Hong Kong. And a classmate of mine, Steve Jurvetson, invited Steve Jobs to come to talk to us. And at the time, Steve was running Next. And the joke was it was going next to nowhere.
Yeah, right.
But still, it was very, very inspiring. And he sat on the floor and told us how he was changing the world. And I thought, wow, that's such a cool profession. I didn't know existed, this tech entrepreneur idea. So I decided I would do. And I stayed in the Bay Area and I started my first company and sold it and another one. And more recently, I decided to start Chili Piper because I saw an opportunity in the world of sales tech. I was running a sales team for a friend of mine, big telecom company, and my salespeople were reluctant to use Salesforce. And people said, "Oh, you have to don't pay their commission if they don't put their deals in Salesforce." And I'm thinking, my daughter, I don't have to say, I won't give you your allowance if you don't use your iPhone.
Yeah, right.
And she enjoys it. And that's where software should be. So that's where I thought we have to go and change that world and bring the right tools for salespeople to deal with their buyers. There's more and more pressure in engaging with buyers, and they cannot have a tool that they are reluctant to use. So that's how we got started.
Yeah. How do you think your background in starting 4 companies and being a CEO and having to make payroll, how do you think that impacts the way in which you approach your customers?
Well, our culture decided when we started the company that our first core value would be help.
Yeah.
And by that, I meant we all help each other. And like you said, when you have to make payroll and you have to get revenues, you can take some shortcuts and say, well, I'm just going to sell whatever sells. But at the end of the day, the way to build a solid business is to not only provide value, but feel that you're helping your customers, that they feel that you're there for you. Sometimes we fail at it, and I get emails where I say, people get value from our software, but they get pissed off, and they say we're going to leave, and that's not because our software is not good; it's because they don't feel we're helping them.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something that has come from my previous experience and from my role as an entrepreneur. I've always thought of myself as CEO as there's a word for it that's used a lot. I think the servant CEO, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely thought that it's my job to develop my employees. If I bring somebody on board, until that person comes on board, I have no responsibility. But once they're on board, then it's my responsibility to help them grow.
Yeah.
And it can happen that I would not succeed. I remember the first person I fired sent me a thank you note. And I was very, very touched by it. And she said, I really appreciate it. You've tried really hard, and I can see, and sorry it didn't work out, but I really appreciate all the efforts you've made to help me.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with customers and the same thing with employees. It's all about helping one another.
That's something if you can get a thank you note for firing someone.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'd rather not have to fire somebody, but
Sure.
I think that's a standard we should all be held to. Us, we are in leadership positions. We at City Piper, we never fire somebody for not meeting their objectives,
Yeah.
because we think it's our responsibility for people to meet their objectives. We only decide to part ways if we think that it's not going to be possible to meet the objectives. And that's not because our objectives are wrong, but because the person does not have the right foundations to get there.
Yeah.
And I think people understand that. And we always try to help and finding a better position. A lot of our employees have changed position to move to a place where they're happier. And we try to always do that.
That's really been interesting. It wasn't something I was anticipating talking about, but that kind of respect for your employees isn't just something that is limited to the inside of your company. It actually gets reflected out. So having that kind of culture inside Chili Piper will help you land accounts, right? I mean, it's not something you do just to take care of your employees. It takes care of the entire business.
Yes, I would do it even if it didn't.
Yeah, right. It's the right thing to do, right?
Well, I think the large problem of the planet right now is this hostility that you see everywhere. In politics, people go, they say like awful things about the other party, and that when an extreme hostility doesn't need to happen. Sometimes I have my reps coming back say, "Oh, that prospect is an asshole," and I say, "We never call a prospect an asshole. We just don't do it, and we don't think it. We just think he has a different view and maybe difficult to work with, but we never turn into hostility against anybody.
Yeah,
not our prospect, not our competitors, not our employees, of course. I think it's something that's going to be more and more common in the future. Already, there's a lot of great work in stopping bullying in schools, right? Yeah. And I think we humankind are starting to understand that if we want to live happy, we have to get rid of this hostility. Yeah. And so I'm doing my little piece.
Oh, that's great. I want to talk about digital marketing.
Yeah.
And digital marketing usually gets thought of when it's a brand like Coca-Cola or some of the big consumer products. But B2B does a lot of digital marketing. It's the bulk of my career has been in B2B. Mm-hmm. And how should it change when you're dealing with B2B SaaS products? What's the key there?
So B2B marketing has become and is becoming more and more specialized. We just hired a chief marketing officer, Jim, a fantastic guy, last November, and he's building up his team. And I see how he's picking each piece with extreme caution, because each piece has become so specialized, from demand gen to content marketing to product marketing. It's ironic because I started my career, I didn't mention it earlier, but when I finished Polytechnic and doing math and computer science, I thought it was all boring and I wanted to do something more fun. So I went to work in marketing for Procter & Gamble in B2C marketing.
That's like an MBA in itself, right?
Yeah, that's what people say. That I've learned a lot about marketing soap, but unfortunately, a few decades later, it's completely irrelevant. It's just no longer the way things are done.
Right.
And marketing for B2C is done completely different. Marketing for B2B is done completely differently. So besides the fact that it's very specialized, there's one thing that is obvious, is that it's a lot more data-driven, because now there is data. And if you don't use the data to drive your choices, you're going to leave a lot of money on the table. And the other piece is that it's moving much faster. Everything is moving much faster because buyers have more choice. They can switch from one vendor to the other in no time. It used to take forever to reintegrate. No, it's no longer the case. So in SaaS, the big thing that's happening is that there are a lot more options. I was looking at in MarTech now, there's more than 1,000 vendors. In sales tech, there's more than 800 vendors. And there's probably an underestimation. So there's a lot of options and people change very quickly. So that's how marketing has changed, that you have to act fast. Our product at Chili Pepper is right along this trend. What we found is that it was actually completely fascinating. Companies tend to have the same process for their inbound. So they spend a lot of dollars in digital marketing. And then when somebody comes to the website, that prospect fills the form, clicks submit. And that's the end of used to be the end of the B2B marketing job. There was a qualified lead a marketing lead that had submitted a form and now was moving on to the realm of the sales world. And what we found is that when they submit this form, they get a thank you page. Thank you, somebody's going to call you. And they wonder, well, who's going to call me when? And that process is incredibly inefficient to the point where companies lose more than half their pipeline. So the number is actually 60%. Most companies lose 60% of their meeting requests in that handoff between marketing and sales, because sales cannot act fast enough to get this prospect engaged and remain interested in the product. So, and I remember talking to salespeople, I say, how are you doing? I say, I'm doing really well. I'm converting at 40%.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you mean to tell me that 60 people who wanted to have a meeting with you didn't, and you think it's great? And the reason why I thought it's great is because sales compared to outbound, where the conversion is 3%, right? You reach a lot of people, you get 3% of meetings. But now in inbound, it didn't make sense. That's a problem we say to solve, but that's very much related to what we were discussing. There's a new trend in B2B marketing that things have to be much faster. So what we did at Chili Pepper, we came up with a solution that we call Concierge, where upon form submission with a smart JavaScript that takes the form data, in real time qualify the prospect, find the rep that should take that prospect, dial the rep, dial the prospect, put them in touch, and now they're connected immediately. And if that's not possible, then we retrieve the calendar of the rep, we retrieve the availability, and we have the prospect book a meeting, so the prospect is now confirmed and engaged. So that doubled conversion rates. We went from, our customers go from 40% to 70 or 80%. But that's a good example of the changing world where you cannot afford to wait and be inefficient and continue the good old ways. It doesn't work anymore, especially if your competitors have moved on to more effective technologies, then you're going to be losing business very quickly.
Yeah. So what do B2B SaaS customers want? Do they want a highly specialized product, or do they want a single pane of glass all in one?
If I had to choose between the two extremes, I would definitely say that right now specialization is winning. I mean, there's a reason why there's more than 1,000 MarTech companies and 800 sales tech companies.
Mm-hmm.
It's because people want the best of breed. There's something fundamental that is enabling that. It's actually a simple internet protocol called OAuth.
Mm-hmm.
So because now you can OAuth into anything, you can access the data from anything, and you can integrate anything with everything. So I can OAuth into Microsoft Outlook, then I OAuth into Marketo, then OAuth into Salesforce, and the three are connected. And it's exactly what we do at Chili Pepper. And OAuth is 3 clicks, right? So where in the past it used to be that you called Accenture and have them come and integrate these systems, now you have a regular user clicking a few buttons and that thing and everything work together. So because there's such a low barrier to integration, then you might as well add a little tool that does a little something, right? So let's say prospecting, for example, we use ZoomInfo and Clearbit and LeadIQ. So we use 3 tools, and they all work really well because they all integrate with our CRM, they all integrate with our prospecting tool, and it's very easy. So that's pushing the trend towards best of breed instead of one big solution. If you have one big solution, you are going to find some pieces that are not optimal, and there's no reason to keep that under optimal. You have to think in our solution concierge, you have to realize that the cost of the solution is a tiny fraction of the money at stake. So in our case, so our solution is $300 a year user, right? So let's say you have 10 salespeople, it's going to cost you $3,000 for the license plus $2,000 for the platform. So $5,000 a year. And then for this $5,000, you're going to double your inbound pipeline. And it's probably millions of dollars of revenues at stake. So it's very often the case for a SaaS solution that the value they provide is 100 times the cost. As a result, you'd be I was going to say a fool, but at least you'd be economically irrational to say, I just want one big solution that does it all, and I don't want to have to deal with this little local optimization in different places. Yeah. So that's what's happening right now, and that's the reason why you see this explosion. Now, I'm not saying that eventually some vendors may not be able to best of breed in multiple points, and therefore, of course, it's simpler if it's all from the same vendor. But it's a tough challenge because the world is moving fast, right? If you have to be the best on multiple solutions, you have to have a strong product and engineering team.
And a lot of those all-in-one solutions aren't really one solution, right? They are multiple solutions that were acquired and knitted together. So, in fact, they're specialized solutions that just happen to be packaged together. They may not all work the same way, and they may not even look the same.
That's a very good point. A very good point. Something that has completely puzzled me recently is when Salesforce acquires a company, you think the market is now dead. Mm-hmm. And what typically happens is the exact opposite. When they bought these social media companies, what was the name of them? Buzz Media, or one of these. Yeah. It felt like that was the end of the market. And then you got all these new companies like Sprinkler and Sprout and coming to the market and grow really fast, and it works the opposite. But Salesforce, so these big companies validate the space, and then somebody else comes, and because they're not really, as you mentioned, they're not really part of the same solution. They have to be integrated to might as well just go with a better solution from another party.
Yeah. I want to understand how, especially these days, we're recording this in late April of 2020, and we're all beset by COVID-19. How can a B2B SaaS business meet their customers where they are? What's the right strategy to find those customers?
I've got to say first that we are a little bit lucky, or fortunate, I should say, at Chili Pepper, because from the beginning, we decided to be a fully remote company.
Smart.
So, and we didn't do that because we thought a virus may come and that would prove convenient. We did it because we thought there are smart people all over the world and we should go and find them, and we shouldn't restrict our recruiting to a particular city. So right now we have 42 employees in 36 cities in 16 countries.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think what other SaaS companies are finding is that this working from home can work very well. That's the thing. So as a result, I'm finding that SaaS companies are less affected than other companies because they are able to operate very efficiently, even in the current strange climate. Then I think the second part of your question is, okay, so where do you find your customers now that they're there? So we did something early on at Chili Pepper. When the crisis started, we looked at which verticals would get negatively affected, which verticals were most likely neutral, and which verticals were potentially positively affected. So in the positively affected, the obvious example is Zoom, right? Going from 20 million to 300 million active users in 6 weeks.
That's a nightmare, isn't it?
I don't know. It's like winning the lottery, right? So that's one extreme. But it's not only Zoom. There are a bunch of companies that are doing extremely well because of the crisis. And then the other extreme, all these travel companies obviously have a hard time because nobody's traveling anymore. So we've had some customers who had to reduce their staff. I don't know if they had to, but at least they did, and not buying anything. So we did these buckets, and we quickly refocused our effort on obviously the most promising bucket, those benefiting from the crisis, and at least those are neutral. And that's reasonably easy to do. So your question was, how do you find these SaaS companies and buyers? And that's definitely the first step in finding them. Then the other thing is because people are, by definition, all online, right? Because everything's now done online. Yeah. Then the digital marketing is even more critical. So, and it's working even better. So right now, our pipeline has increased compared to December and January because more people are online and have more time to do their research. It puts even more emphasis on digital marketing.
Yeah. It's increasingly a more digital world than it was in February.
Indeed.
So revenue streams, boy, I bet most of the people listening to this right now are really focused on their revenue streams. How can they become more effective, more efficient? And does there need to be some kind of cultural change baked into the DNA of a company with management, marketing, and sales and all those working together?
Yes, absolutely. One is what I just mentioned earlier, that you have to get even better at targeting. But the other piece is also what we discussed earlier around speed. You cannot afford to have breakpoints in your process. Your sales, marketing, customer success, account manager, they all have to work together in a much more efficient way. Because as everybody's online now, things move even faster. People are going to switch from one vendor to the other is no time. All the different teams have to collaborate much more closely. We see it in the emergence of a new job title, which is revenue operations, right? It used to be marketing operations, sales operation. And people, no, that's not the way to do it. It's revenue operations. You have to look at it holistically. And that's completely critical. I mean, every company should move towards revenue operations and break the silos between. That's the basics to do that. And that will enable these companies to move much faster. But for sure, they have to collaborate and be much more accountable. So we're finding that more marketing teams now are held on at least pipeline generation, if not even revenues, as opposed to just leads. Yeah. Because, generating leads is not so useful. You have to make sure that you're really helping your sales team. And you see this SLA between sales and marketing. So that collaboration is more and more critical.
Yeah. And attribution in the model you're describing now shouldn't be an issue, right?
It's still a difficult issue, right, the attribution. But there are more and more better and better tools to do it. This attribution, everything is now. So it's not possible to do the right attribution. I think what you're implying is that people shouldn't fight and who should take the credit for what. And that I completely agree. Yeah. At Chili Pepper, for example, we double the commission between account executive and account managers because account managers are supposed to expand the revenue, account executive, the hunters. But you want to reward hunters for hunting companies with potential for expansion. And you also want to reward the account managers for this expansion. So the double compensation, I think, is more and more common. Yeah. Because you want people to work together and not have to fight for their turf.
Okay. Well, this has been really enlightening, Nicolas, and I really appreciate you joining me.
Sure. My pleasure.
Thanks. All right. Next time, Keith Cartwright on starting his new agency. Confessions of a Marketer is a trademark of Podco Media Networks, and this episode is copyright 2020. I'm Mark Reed Edwards. Stay healthy and see you next time.